Hello, guys. Welcome to another edition of the Pure Investments podcast. I know it's been a little while. I'm your host, Kai, and I'm joined here by Bowen, Smith, and GR. Say hi, guys.
What's up, guys?
How's it going?
Hi.
Hello.
All right. So, it's been, 3 weeks probably since we did our last podcast?
Yeah.
So a lot has kind of happened since then. Not really, actually. The alt market, a lot's happened since then. Bitcoin's kind of just been doing its thing and going sideways in this weird up and down channel between 8,000 and 10,000 for the past 2 or 3 weeks. Alts made some nice moves and consolidated, but that's basically about it. The big news going on this week is the Consensus Conference. If you're watching this on your YouTube and not listening, I right now have a chart open on basically the movements that the market has had during and after Consensus in the past. Right now we're in day 2, I think, of Consensus.
Yep.
And we haven't really seen any real moves yet, which is interesting. But that's not completely out of the ordinary. In 2016 there really wasn't much of a move either during the Consensus period. It was kind of like a 5-10% up move across the market. 2017 saw a huge move during and a huge move after. But all in all, the general theme I just kind of wanted to show with this chart is just that, Consensus seems to be, whether it's correlation causation type of situation or not, but this point in time for some reason seems to be a takeoff point for Bitcoin in general.
Yeah, I think an important thing also to look at is the fact that there was small movements in 2016, but large movements in 2017. What really matters here to me is Consensus is all about raising awareness because it's such a big event. And in 2016, I think a lot of the people who knew about blockchain, knew about cryptocurrencies, they knew about it. And so raising awareness, it didn't really increase the prices. Versus in 2017, it was so much larger that it really showed, people who are more interested in it started to get educated about it. And that really increased the prices with people buying in.
Yeah.
So you can kind of look at it for 2016, since there weren't as many people, you can see that it took about 20 days before any real price action actually.
I've noticed a very clear correlation between Google searches for Bitcoin and crypto and the overall market cap going up, which is something that you just briefly touched on.
Interesting. I don't have that up, but did you notice any increases recently?
I haven't looked at it recently, but I know as a rule of thumb, in 2017, the market cap moved up with the searches on Google.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I wonder, with Consensus happening, if there is actually an increase, because the Consensus attendance is sky high this year. I believe they have
It'd be
around
interesting to
7,000
see
people.
if it has a direct effect on the market, for sure.
Yeah, I am a little curious if it has to do more with the time frame, and Consensus is more just the right time, you know what I mean, just in a natural market cycle. Because if you notice, 2016's was early May 2nd to the 4th, whereas 2017 was very late May. It was actually a week from now last year. And that could kind of be the differential there too. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's just something to keep an eye on. Obviously there's a lot of big players at that conference. Any new technologies or any interesting new cryptos that are coming out are going to probably be launched there. Any big news will be coming out of there more than likely.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to say that, I think we're not seeing major movement with the larger cryptocurrencies because they're kind of going to come out and say, hey, we're here. We're still here. And that's going to be about it. You can't really raise awareness if you're already one of the largest cryptocurrencies out there. Versus some of these small caps that we'll be talking later. I think they're really going to have the potential to explain who they are, what they're doing, and really raise awareness for their small microcap projects.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, anyone who's attending Consensus knows what Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin are. There's nothing really groundbreaking coming out for those types of coins at Consensus. It's more just overall market sentiment, I think, gets formed at these events. You have all these bigwigs that are networking and talking, and that's the type of stuff that builds eventual bull markets, or it could be bear markets. Stuff like that is what's built off of things like Consensus. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because this will be 2 or 3 years of this type of movement, it could be coincidental. After consensus, if it's a fourth year, you really start to see that this conference run by CoinDesk actually does seem to have an effect on the overall market.
Sure.
So just looking at Bitcoin right now, I don't know how you guys feel. Looking at the daily chart, there's kind of a lot of mixed signals in my opinion. We're in like a sort of little bear flag here, coming down from 10K, and we've just kind of been going sideways from about between 8 and 8,500. That said, there's been some good consolidation. RSI is down at 43. Stoke RSI was at 0 and curled back up. MACD keeps trying to pop up a little bit and then just keeps going sideways. So I don't know how you guys feel about Bitcoin right now. I'm really neutral though. I don't really have a feeling one way or another. I just don't see any clear and concise reason to believe that things are turning right now. I guess something happened last night with the way this candle today is, where instead of it being a daily 9 candle on TD sequential, it's being forced as a 1. I don't know why that is, considering it's a red candle. I'm sure there's a reason. I just can't think of it right now. So there's that's going on. That's the only real reversal signal I see. That, and I mentioned in Premium a few days ago the 13 countdown, which should end a cycle and start a new wave up. It should be a reversal signal. We saw that with the 2 little green days we had back on, let's say Tuesday, so back on Saturday and Sunday. And even yesterday, to an extent, there was that nice, really big doji. Today is weird. I'm interested to see actually what the next, I think we have 2 hours left on this daily candle. So by the time you're watching this video, you'll know what happened. But I'm interested to see if we make another late night push before the daily candle actually closes.
Yeah, and I did want to say, it's classic Bitcoin to completely change what the candle looks like 2 hours before it closes, because it does that. But one thing I want to talk about in a more general sense is, especially in the crypto market, but in markets in general, but especially in the crypto market, you generally hear people saying it's a bullish market or it's a bearish market. And people are usually very confident in what they're saying. And with Bitcoin, obviously, we had a long bull run. We had a very long bull market, absolutely. And then we definitely had a bearish market. But I do want to open up that there is a distinct possibility that we are going to have sideways movement, neither bull nor bear market, just Bitcoin being Bitcoin, which I think would be very interesting to see. Some smaller movements in the main player in the cryptocurrency space would really, shift sentiment surrounding it. I think that'd be really interesting to see, because right now, you still hear people throwing around the crypto space, oh, we're about to enter a bear market, we're about to enter a bull market. But, there is the possibility that we are just going to see lots of small up and down plays for an extended period of time.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can go back to, I guess it was June to December of 2016, and we moved sideways for around almost 200 days, 182 days or so before finally breaking a new high. And there was some obvious ups and downs in there, but for the most part, it was kind of just that sideways movement. And it's hard to tell because of how small these candles are back here, but the movement's very similar to the way it was this time around. That sideways, almost like a small pennant that we then broke down from and then recovered from and then just kind of moved sideways through. So we're kind of in that same realm. I mean, that said though, too, you got to figure from the height back in December, we're at about 150 days right now. So
yeah,
that all has to be taken into account with the current sideways or bear market. It's been 150 days. So 150 days is what, a little under half a year? Yeah, a little under half a year. Even if it's 180 days, that brings us to mid-June-ish. So, another month or so, if that were to play out similar to the way it did in 2016, which I wouldn't be completely shocked with. A half a year bear/sideways market's probably due for Bitcoin after the moves we've made in the past year and a half.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I do think it would be very interesting to see what happens in the crypto world, because as of now, when Bitcoin hit that bottom and started to reverse, I think a lot of the crypto community really thought we were going into a full-on bull market once again. Bam, here it comes. You saw alts reverse, alts were flying, all of them. And now we're kind of seeing this weird pause. And I think this is going to be really interesting to see where the community guides it. I also think, for me personally, one of my favorite indicators used to be MACD to watch Bitcoin. And as soon as we hit that bear market, it instantly kind of became invalidated, which I think is really interesting to watch which indicators become more prevalent as time changes, because, there's obviously certain ones that work at certain points and don't work at all at other points. So I think that's will be interesting to continue to watch.
Yeah, I mean, right now, actually, the only indicator that I've seen that's been consistent on some kind of basis is actually Stoke on the daily chart, which is weird because I usually don't like using it on the daily. But
Absolutely. Same with me.
every time it's hit 0, yeah, it just had like that almost like V reversal upwards, which I think is kind of interesting there.
One thing that sorry to interrupt you, Kai. One thing that takes my eye when I look at Bitcoin on the 1-day chart is that Bitcoin was stuck under the Kijun from the beginning of January, I think. It was stuck under the Kijun, and then towards the end of April, beginning of May, it's actually rised above the Kijun, and it's just formed a support on it right at the bottom of the Ichimoku cloud.
Yeah,
which is very interesting. We've been stuck under that for a good few months, and now it's formed support on top of it.
That is actually a good point. I'll just kind of highlight that for people who don't really know what we're talking about and are watching the video. The Kijun's this red line here that you see, and you can see here, here, here. Every single time we hit against it, we fell back down until breaking through it, like Smith said, kind of in late April, which was also the first time that we were able to break back into the cloud since falling out of it back in January. And now we're just kind of hovering right here on the bottom, where the bottom of the cloud and the Kijun actually meet. They're at they're probably $30 apart, which on Bitcoin is nothing.
Where the 50 moving averages as well on the 1-day chart. The Kijun and the 50 moving average are the exact same point at the moment. I would say looking at Bitcoin, it's on a pivot point inside the triangle that started in February, the lower February. I'm not sure if you've got that marked on your chart, but I definitely say we're at a pivot point right now.
No, within I don't, but I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about that second little M that we made, right?
Yeah.
Back there? Yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, it's interesting. We're definitely at a point of indecision, which makes sense, especially with a big conference like Consensus and things like that chart we showed, going a little viral and stuff. Leave it to the market makers to make people have no clue what's going to happen. You know what I mean? That's just standard market manipulation, and that's what you get in crypto sometimes. And until the last person gives up, they'll keep it up. You know what I mean? Until the very last person they think gave up, and that's just part of the game. But it's definitely a little neutral. I would be leaning mildly bullish just in general sentiment.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I would say, but I'm not far in that bullish sentiment. I'm 55-45 right now.
Yeah, I'm like 60-40. Like I said, we're at a pivot point inside the triangle, so even if we do break down here through that Kijun, we still have a good chance to bounce around 7,200, 7,300. It just means that we would elongate this triangle into, say, June or July, which a lot of people probably don't want, but it might be necessary. Like it was mentioned in the podcast earlier, we might see some sideways movement as opposed to a decision soon.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants sideways movement or down movement. All we want is Lambos, but you can't always get what you want. Sometimes you got to let the market come to you.
Absolutely.
Sideways movement isn't always terrible. I mean, for the altcoins, kind of let them do their thing without Bitcoin screwing with it, especially with Consensus coming.
It's really not. You figure in general, from around April 20th till the May 10th or so, we had like a 2 or 3 week period of sideways movement on Bitcoin, and all the alts saw some really nice returns. Just kind of looking around the market here on the video end, but I mean, you saw a lot of alts getting 40-50%, sometimes more, in terms of returns during that period. Obviously they've been down a little bit since Bitcoin dropped back down, but that was to be expected. I actually called it out in our premium channel almost the day all the alts consolidated, if I'm not mistaken.
It was the day of. It was the day of, and I said that I was starting to scale out of some alts just because, I felt like Bitcoin was going to make some form of volatile move,
and the alts couldn't keep going up as long as they were. You know, it had been just this slow, steady rise for around a month straight, market wide, and it just made sense that we'd see a consolidation, and that's exactly what ended up happening.
Absolutely. And going back to what you were saying about how alts had a nice rise up and are now kind of seeing a little bit of a change. Well, I headed over to CoinMarketCap and I went to their tools to their global charts. I don't know if you're pulling that up, but currently I'm looking at it. And something I think is very interesting is looking at Bitcoin dominance, which some people think correlates with price, but it really doesn't correlate with price, especially because we've been entering this new cycle. The last couple times when we've seen Bitcoin an all-time low for dominance, we've also seen it being going lower in price. And we're now seeing at a not all-time low, but a very low point for Bitcoin's dominance in terms of the overall market. Yet, at the point of where it started going down, Bitcoin started going up in valuation. And I think that has a lot to do with our others taking over in dominance. Going back to December, when we were still in that bull market. So I'm looking at December 1st, let's just say. Others, we were only at a 13% market domination, so very small. And then at our most recent peak, we had an all-time high of 27%. So we're really seeing Bitcoin kind of lose its prowess in the market. And we're also seeing with that, more recently, as alts kind of stagnate and move sideways and do their own thing, and Bitcoin also does that. We're also seeing Ethereum rise. And with that, the dominance of Ethereum rising back up to almost where it used to be at 18%, which I think is really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that is going to be, the obviously Ethereum and the others section really work in conjunction well. If Ethereum is rising, roughly like I think 60% of the market or something like that is Ethereum tokens. So it stands to reason that when Ethereum is rising, as long as those tokens are maintaining their GUI value, or however you want to pronounce it, you're going to see the others rise as well, because that's just natural. If their value of versus Ethereum is staying the same and Ethereum's going up, obviously their value versus Bitcoin is going up then too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was a pattern I had pointed out, and I want to say one of our first podcasts actually, which was the pattern of looking at the market dominance of alts, and they actually do have this pretty defined pattern of making new highs and then flagging back down to the previous high of dominance and then making another new high. So I'm interested to see how that pans out, because right now the previous high from back in like January, February was around 25%, and that's right where we are now. I'm curious if we take a little bounce here and proceed up more. I think that'll be interesting to see, because it's not without question to have that little bit of a flag down either. That's to be expected.
I think looking into the future a little bit farther, I know a lot of crypto is very short term, but looking a little bit farther into the future, I really could see this pattern of Bitcoin going down in dominance, back up a little bit and down, but a general downward trend, and others taking this general upwards trend. And I could definitely see others sort of take over the Bitcoin market as more and more players emerge into the market, and more, new technological cryptocurrencies or just sort of revolutionary or changing cryptocurrencies enter the space. I could definitely see others become bigger and bigger as people get to choose what they actually want. And the crypto market gets more and more refined in our current, 1,600 plus main cryptocurrencies, the ones listed on CoinMarketCap, that starts to actually go down or stagnate as the major players get picked out by people. I think that'll be really interesting to watch maybe a year or two in.
Yeah, and that's something Smith and I have talked at length about in the podcast in general. It's just that, you're going to see the scammier coins slowly get weeded out, and that'll cause the overall amount of coins to go down, but likely the overall market cap in general of crypto to go up.
Yeah. Yep. As it becomes a more real industry, industry that doesn't have things like Dogecoin as one of the main players in the market. A real industry doesn't have Dogecoin as one of the main players in the market. So once that starts to happen, I think we're really going to see crypto as a whole go off in a really good way. But one thing I wanted to talk about crypto in reference to just markets in general is, I don't know if you can pull this up, but I pulled up my TradingView chart of Bitcoin to USD, and I then pulled up a comparison chart of that compared to the S&P 500. And watching those has always been very interesting to me. I don't know if anyone else had any thoughts on that, but
Oh yeah, no, I've pointed out multiple times. Because when you think about it, the S&P 500 is where people put their money, and it's like generally safe. You know that it's generally going to go up, but the problem is right now is that it's kind of fluctuating a ton. Though I don't think it's necessarily going to start going down, but if it does, Bitcoin will likely follow. Even though you want to believe that it's like a gold and it's going to gain value, the problem is crypto is just too volatile for that to happen. There's not enough like backing it. So if the market starts to go down, people are going to start losing money from the S&P 500. Therefore, they're going to pull out the riskier investments because people like to have cash during times of uncertainty. So,
Yeah. The one thing I would point out though, just looking at the S&P 500, interestingly with Bitcoin, is that since that big green candle back on like 413 or so, they've actually been trading opposites of each other. So
Mhm.
Bitcoin went from like 6,800 up to around 10,000, and during that same span, there was like one green day on the S&P the next day, and then it went from around 2,700 down to around 2,500, which I know that doesn't sound as big, but you got to realize the, regular stock market doesn't move as much as
yeah,
this, and
hell no,
especially
hell no.
an index. But there was this move down to around like low 26, high 2,500s, and then when Bitcoin went down to this current level of around 8,000, the S&P jumped back up to around 2,750. So they're actually trading opposites of each other right now, which is something to watch because they had always been very similar in their movements.
hmm
Just you can watch if you're watching the stream. Just in general, the overall movements of them was very very similar, and now they're kind of moving in an opposite direction. Like I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Especially considering, man, yesterday the S&P 500 looked awful. It closed in like a really bad inverted hammer up at the top of like a whole week of green. So that's interesting to look at. um, but yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
something to keep an eye on. Just in general, any market is a market to be followed. So don't ever, think,
course.
oh, it's not worth that. That's a completely separate market. That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right. That's absolutely untrue. I think that's a very important point what you said, Kai. Of markets are markets, and anyone who's investing in not anyone, but large investors who are investing in a market are going to be likely investing in multiple markets. So the people who are trading multiple millions a day or more, or groups or industries, they're not just trading cryptocurrencies. They're not just trading stocks. They're going to be trading everything that they can because everything is tradable. And when you have that amount of money, that's your life. And when you have also that amount of money, market manipulation, I really think is very real. And while in the crypto community, it's very accepted, yep, there's manipulation. I think a lot of people in the stock market kind of think, no, this is, all the small players working together, which I do not agree with at all. I wholeheartedly disagree with it. I think going back to what you said of the markets moving opposite directions is really interesting because them working together to me says, again, manipulation, bring it upwards, and then moving opposite directions again says, well, something goes up a bunch. Yep, it's being pushed up. They sell out. It goes down, and as they sell out, they buy into the other market, whether it be stocks or cryptocurrencies, and boost that one back up, which is really what's making them go opposites again. And I think that's something that's important to recognize, that there are groups and people who can really influence and control the entire market as a whole.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
one of the big things in trading like indexes stuff like actual stocks is a lot of it's run by like trading algorithms and stuff now. Yeah, you have your big groups of people that are investing, but a lot of it is dominated by like trading algorithms and such things, trading huge volumes of currency throughout.
hmm
And those same algorithms can be applied to Bitcoin and stuff. So that same amount of money, just agreeing with you, Bowen.
Yeah, and something
kind
that
of
you
can move between markets.
absolutely, and something that you, Kai, actually pointed out to me a while ago was that some of the largest Bitcoin wallets have been buying on steady time intervals. I think it was, you showed me one wallet that was buying 200 Bitcoin at a time, that one that was buying 100 Bitcoin at a time. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I haven't looked at
But
that in a
steadily buying
while,
them
but
Yeah, at the same sort of time intervals. I mean, but at that time, I think that was very interesting to watch. That there definitely wasn't someone getting on their computer and being like, "Oh, let me just buy some Bitcoin." No, it was an algorithm set up to work in a certain way. And I think that was really, really cool to watch.
Yeah, and that was primarily during that big run down from like 20,000 down to 6. It was just, it wasn't random. It was clearly, calculated purchasing on the way down. And they weren't selling. They weren't moving their money to exchange wallets or anything like that. They were just building up wallets. And I thought that was a big just sentiment thing that kind of got glossed over amongst the community. And the like you said, the thought that the community is who controls the pricing is not true. There are definitely people who play the stock market at a very high scale and also play in the crypto market.
You also can't forget OTC stuff, like the over-the-counter stuff. Like
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
a huge investor, you're not going to go into an exchange and go buy
No,
10
exactly.
or like $20 million worth. You're going to go trade it over the counter. It's not going to
Yep.
have any effect on the price.
Correct. So you can, but that's why it's worth looking at things like the largest wallets, because you can
Of course.
see those movements. You can see that purchasing, and that accumulation by people with more money than God that actually control the markets. um, but yeah, what about alts? Just looking around for while we were talking and before we started this, the alt market seems kind of interesting to me right now. It looks like we might be nearing the bottom, possibly. On this little flag down, it's kind of tough to say, but a lot of them are on really nice support right now. And you see as I'm scrolling through here, there's a lot of these signals with Stoke being kind of low, and VIX fix triggering buys and all these other things on various coins that seem to indicate ideally some kind of bottom, but they seem to be moving with Bitcoin right now too. Those 2 green days of Bitcoin were 2 green days on alts, and the 2 red days we've had here on Bitcoin have been 2 red days of alts, which is nice to see. I like the idea of them trading together as opposed to separate. I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather see Bitcoin and my alts going up at the same time than one or the other. It makes it a lot easier to trade in general. You don't have to constantly decide of, is Bitcoin going to go up? Because then I should sell all my alts into Bitcoin, and are the alts going to go up? Because then I should buy every piece of Bitcoin I have with alts, and so on and so forth. It makes it a little bit easier to trade when you can just follow one whole market as opposed to each individual.
Yeah, I think watching right now similar market cap alts has been really cool because they've been moving very similarly recently, which watching that is really interesting for me. I like opening up a trading view chart and putting on a bunch of comparisons of alts that are either a similar market cap or just have had similar movements, because we're seeing some alts that are moving almost the exact same as other ones, which again to me screams either manipulation or whether or not fundamentals are there. People trading based off of price, not based off of product, which again I think will change in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years in the crypto market. When instead of cryptocurrencies being just a cryptocurrency, they will also be a utility. They will be something that is usable, and it's not just traded as a thing that can be traded. It will be valued as a possession. That'll be a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Man, that move
I think one of
IOST
the
made.
comparisons. Oh yeah, IOST and Polymath. Yeah, though their Polymath is way younger than IOST, they were kind of making the same initial movements, which is caught my eye since they're both recent ICOs. It's kind of interesting just to watch Polymath follow in IOST's footsteps.
Yeah. But yeah, no, there's a bunch of coins like that. C&D and Fuel are very similar if you want to look at them, and they're both in that 900 sat range. If you flick back and forth between the two charts, you would, you probably couldn't tell which one was which if you didn't have the indicator on the top left telling you the name of it. Like they're that similar. And that includes, the big parabolic move C&D had from back when it was the PBC coin of the month. and fuel didn't have quite the same meteoric move, but if you expand the chart enough to make it similar, it you can barely even tell the difference, and that's like you were saying, just similar market cap coins in general. They seem to trade together sometimes, which is just something interesting to keep a watch on.
Yeah, I like comparing and seeing which cryptocurrencies are more comparable in terms of similar price and less comparable. And generally what I've found is that ones with similar charts in the past are going to be more similar in the present, oddly enough, because the past predicts the present, right?
Mhm.
And something I think that's really interesting about that is they aren't always similar market cap. And when you look at similar market cap cryptocurrencies and or similar priced cryptocurrencies, you'll see two very distinct comparisons. So, because there's overall market trend, and then there's small movements. If you look at ones that look the same in general,
Mhm.
their overall trend will be very similar, but those small movements, maybe a period of a month, could be drastically different. You could see one go down 10%, one go up 30% in that 1 month, but then in 2 months later, they'll be at the exact same percentage change. It's just a matter of how they got there. Versus, I think two graphs I like comparing were, again, here I like going to my shit coins to watch the market because they're easy to forget about the fundamentals, but Dogecoin and RDD, or excuse me, I think it was Dogecoin and Scicoin and RDD and Bitbean. I can't remember exactly, but the four of those, two of them overlap almost perfectly, and the other two overlap almost perfectly. But if you look at all four of them, they look different. I think that's very interesting because they're all these very low price shit coins, which with no fundamentals, right?
Mhm.
But just to be honest, but when you
Literally
look
a
at their
meme.
graphs, literally a
Yeah.
meme. Two of them are the same, and the other two are the same, but those two pairs are different. I think looking at that is really interesting because you can usually predict one using the other, and vice versa with that. So I know I personally have. I entered. I can't remember. I posted this a while. This was a while back, but one of them took off and the other one hadn't. And I said, okay, I'm entering because of this. And oddly enough, it took off as well. And this has been generally true for these similar price cryptocurrencies that the short-term movements really are the same.
Yeah, and I mean, there's one example of that. At least until recently, I don't know what caused the separation. And my theory on
Yeah.
that is that it's it's whales that are trading one or two coins at the same time, and that's what causes them to be so similar. But TRX and Poe, for a large majority of this entire bull run, were very, very similar in their movements and their sat values. They were kind of trailing each other by a little bit until very recently. I don't know what caused, Poe got up to like that 700 range and came back down, whereas TRX ran all the way back up to 1,000, 1,100. I don't know if there was some kind of news that happened with TRX that caused it to go up higher. But that was just something that I had been following for a while, going all the way back to late December even.
Yeah, and I think I also I don't know if you have that graph. Do you have the graph up right now?
No, I'm just kind of flipping back and forth between them.
Okay. Yeah, I remember I also posted a while back in our education page when the market was still bearish, excuse me, about market similarity. And two of the graphs, because it was a graph, I had one cryptocurrency with four other ones added for comparison. Excuse me again. The graphs really look the same. I mean, they're obviously different percentage changes. Like, of course, my internet is not being good, and I can't actually see which ones I posted about. But oh, there it is. So my main graph was actually Verge, and I was looking at Verge. I was looking at TRX. I was looking at a couple of these other ones, and the graph really was a big spike up with. So it's Verge, ADA, PO, TRX, and RDD. I like to pick a nice diverse group, but they all spiked up with Bitcoin and then it all been coming down and look generally similar. And I think that's just a reflection of market health as a whole. And you could look at it manipulation or just market health as a whole. And I think looking at it either way, you're going to find the same thing, which is generally things move together. Like you're going to find your metals move together and your stocks move together.
Yeah.
Together, and so do your cryptocurrency.
Yeah. So another thing you can kind of look at is Tron and Verge. They both seemed like before Bitcoin started to turn, Verge took off and then Tron took off. I don't remember which way came first, but they both took off before Bitcoin did. They can kind of be predictors for what the rest of the market is going to do, simply because people love to, like, I don't know, manipulate them and just kind of throw money at it. So it gives you like an initial sentiment in the market before anything happens. At least that's what happened kind of with Verge, slightly
Yeah,
predicting Bitcoin's turn
you know,
when it took off.
one thing I want to point out, and this is something I'd pointed out a while back now. I think I pointed this out probably back in late March. But if you go onto like one of the older charts for Verge, like Bitrex or something, Verge was one of the big runners going all the way back to the alt run in 2017, in early June that
Yeah.
time. And what Verge did at that time was it ran up to around 300 sats, came all the way back down to around 40, ran back up to 200, not quite getting to its high, but getting really close, and then coming all the way back down again to around 50 before what eventually became that December push where we ran it up to, I think it was like 2,000 sats, right?
Gotta say, I just gotta put it out there. I
Mhm.
do remember when I posted my entry of 49 Satoshis into Verge, and we ran all the way up. Sorry, I just gotta do a self-shill up there, but go on.
But anyway, before I was rudely interrupted by Bowen, something I had pointed out back then is that this little alt period felt like it could have been very much like August of last year.
Mhm.
And if you look at August of last year, it was that high second wave to recover losses before coming all the way back down before the next big alt season. And if you look, there's so many similarities on this chart. You have the higher lows from the initial start of the run to the first bottom. You have the lower highs from the top that I'm drawing here, and you have this now flagging down. So I'm interested to see if that does play itself back out again. If it did, that would mean TRX would come down somewhere around this like 400 range before the next alt season potentially would start. But the charts are very, very similar to the way that you look at something like Verge from back then. And if this does play out, it would be an interesting market cycle to keep in mind for the future too.
Absolutely. And going back to what I was saying about MACD and how it was very accurate and now it's much less accurate. And you talking about how, and I totally agree, stochastic and stochastic RSI, which I used to use a little bit here and there for sure, but now they're really accurate with the market. Divergence was also when Bitcoin was having its run up from, let's say, I think it was 7,000 all the way up to 20,000. Divergence really didn't mean crap for Bitcoin. It really just wasn't a very good predictor. But now it's a very good predictor. So kind of going back to, I think it's interesting watching the shift from which indicators and which patterns are more prevalent and more powerful in the market.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I don't know if you have that article opened up about Amazon, but Miles wanted us to talk about that.
I do. Amazon is moving into a blockchain partnership with a company I've never heard of. I believe they're new, but they're formed from, if I'm not mistaken, some people who were involved with Ethereum. And they're called Kaleido. And it looks like the intent is to and the idea is to implement blockchain technology with AWS. I don't know. I haven't read the whole article. Do they go into detail about what exactly they're doing with it? But I believe it's just, it's using blockchain as a software as a service, basically, behind
Mhm.
the AWS marketplace, which is interesting. We'll see how it works out. In a way, it's not technically an Ethereum partnership with Amazon. It's more so Ethereum. People who started Ethereum and helped build Ethereum are building this Kaleido that Amazon is partnering with. But it's definitely interesting. They're definitely the biggest of the names and companies that I've seen that have gotten involved in this now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out over the next, couple of years.
Yeah, I did read the full article, and they don't go into specific detail. They're basically just saying we're going to use blockchain, which is pretty much what companies nowadays are saying. But the difference is this one's Amazon; it's not just some company.
Yeah.
And the what was said by Joseph Lubin, one of the founders of Ethereum, was, quote, and this is from the article, this is a heavy-duty, full-stack way of getting the company into blockchain solutions. And I think what's most important about this article, not to ignore price or anything, but I think what's more important to look at in this article rather than, oh, Ethereum's going to moon. No, I think it's just that companies are using blockchain. It's realized. At this point, it's not just like companies should be using it, and you have your crypto enthusiasts screaming that, and everybody else saying go away. This is now, it's realized. Amazon saying yes, we're going to be using blockchain. If you scroll down to the end of the article, and also if you've been following the news, Facebook is really trying to. Well, they're kind of being unclear right now, but they've said everything from we are going to have our own token to we are going to use blockchain in the back end of Facebook. And anywhere in there, you're seeing blockchain being a part of it. And, excuse me, I think that's really interesting that we're seeing these big players, Amazon, Facebook, who knows who else. eBay was doing something at some point. I can't remember exactly, but we're seeing these big players start to really use this technology. And as the technology develops, I think we're going to see more cryptocurrencies that aren't just peer-to-peer transactions, but instead are infrastructure cryptocurrencies really taking off because they're a huge player in this sort of space.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not, I don't want anyone to misunderstand. This is not Amazon launching its own blockchain or launching its own cryptocurrency. Now, is that a possibility down the line? Sure, of course, but that's baseless speculation, But what's important here is a large company, one of the, top 5 companies in the entire world, is utilizing blockchain technology, which is the underlying technology that runs all the cryptocurrencies that we do trade. And that is important. Mass adoption of the technology is what will cause more and more institutional investment in crypto, which is what will cause more and more Lambos, so to speak.
So interesting story. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Another piece of fundamental news that has the potential to be quite big, similar to the Amazon news that you just touched about for the overall crypto space, is a new exchange that's releasing in, I believe, June, and it's a free crypto trading regulated crypto exchange powered by NASDAQ, powered by their matching engine. So NASDAQ are actually getting involved with crypto now. They're going to make their own regulated exchange. There's quite a lot of hype that's come from this over the last few days. And it definitely has the potential to boost the overall awareness of crypto if NASDAQ are going to release a regulated exchange. It says here they're going to only have top 6 coins for now, similar to like Coinbase. They'll only have the sort of top large market cap coins, which I guess would make sense if it's regulated because you can't really regulate low market cap coins.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're going to...
Go ahead.
Oh, so the NASDAQ exchange. So what I was actually reading that article earlier. They are talking about how eventually they're going to move into other coins, but like their big thing was that we're, quote, not just going to list any coin. So that's going to kind of, as Bone was saying earlier, kind of bring legitimacy to the crypto market when exchanges finally stop listing shit coins like Dogecoin and Satacoin and stuff. NASDAQ is kind of the first big player for
just
that.
Overall, the market maturity.
Exactly. And there's another the other news of Coinbase is introducing institutional products.
That's
it looks like they're working with hedge funds, it sounds like, to launch a SEC regulated broker as well. So similar to what you're saying with the NASDAQ situation. And they're working with a bunch of different hedge funds and, capital organizations to work on this, which is another big deal, like I was just saying, to really grow. And people think that this marketplace has seen growth, but in relation to the stock market, crypto as a whole isn't even worth being a top 10 company on the stock exchange at its current market cap valuation. So the institutional money is what's really important to get involved. That's what will help grow and legitimize the marketplace. So seeing Coinbase launching this SEC backed exchange with the backing of a bunch of hedge funds, and seeing NASDAQ doing it, these are all really, really big moves. They're early in the process, but they're huge moves for the overall long-term legitimization of crypto as a whole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So the
Go ahead,
huge
Gio.
thing about so the huge thing about that is you keep hearing things about indexes for Bitcoin and stuff, but Coinbase is actually setting up institutional investors with a way to actually buy crypto, buy Bitcoin, and that's important because you want to decrease the supply of Bitcoin. That's what's actually going to push the price up. An index isn't buying Bitcoin; it's just tagging a price to Bitcoin. So you hear all these indexes being released, like the Galaxy Digital one, I think. That's not going to affect the price because it's not actually buying Bitcoin like this Coinbase thing with their institutional investors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. Do we have anything else to cover? I think that's about it. All in all, we're kind of just watching the market right now. I think we all agree we're mildly bullish, but still for the most part kind of neutral. And that's kind of where we're at. Hopefully next week we've seen a little bit more of a directional shift. But Bowen, do you have something else to say?
I just wanted to quickly mention, in addition to NASDAQ and the legitimacy and all of this centralization that's kind of happening, I just want to quickly finish off, there's a huge counterbalance of decentralized exchanges having the highest trading volume ever in cryptocurrencies. And I think we're seeing cryptocurrencies having almost a split with the regular market wanting to get in, centralize, and trade, and the decentralized market of people who, again, want cryptocurrencies to be the ideological beginning of Bitcoin, with decentralized markets continue and small players continue to try and take over the market. And that's all I have to say.
All right. So I think we're going to stop it here. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.